Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope everyone's having a great day. Now, normally you would see me in a cemetery. I am not in a cemetery today, obviously, because I had a story for you today, an interesting story. At least I think it's an interesting story that I wanted to share with you. So my grandparents, they passed away years ago. There were some boxes of their stuff in my mother's basement, and decided to start going through some old pictures, all of this old stuff. And I came across something that I thought was really interesting. So now back during World War II, a lot of the younger single women would be pen pals to those soldiers that are overseas in Europe fighting. And my grandmother was one of those women that would write to soldiers and kind of keep their spirits up and communicate with them through letters and postcards. And going through my grandparents' stuff, I happened to find a postcard here that my grandmother um, was in contact with a soldier who was in the Air Force. He actually wrote back to her, and this is his postcard to her. And the interesting thing about it is he was a prisoner of war at the time. And so I'm gonna read the postcard to you. And I did a little research on him. So I'm going to tell you his story a little bit. And I just thought it was really interesting. My grandmother's name was Juanita, and it says, "Dear Juanita, in case you're wondering what happened to me, I'm a prisoner of war in Germany. I'm in good health and doing okay. Life here wouldn't be so bad if there were a little more to do. Hoping to see you soon. Love, Don." And you can see it there. I'll also take a photo of it. And here's the postcard. You can see it's from Germany. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. This is really an interesting artifact. And although I really like this postcard, the family of this Lieutenant Don Hillier would probably find it a little more sentimental than me, because this is their, the writing of Don Hillier, and they might want that. So I decided I'm going to do a little investigation. Let's see if I could find some family members of Lieutenant Hillier. And even more so, let me do a little research on what happened to Lieutenant Hillier and why he's a prisoner of war in Germany. So I did that, and internet's a wonderful place. So I got some information here on Lieutenant Hillier and that fateful flight, and I wanted to share that with you. So Lieutenant Hilliard was a pilot, a B-17 pilot. He piloted an aircraft that they had called the Josephine. You know, a lot of these old B-17 bombers, and you've seen it where they name the planes, right? And Memphis Belle's another famous one where they have painted a picture of like a woman on the front nose of it and stuff like that. So this plane was called Josephine, and it was piloted by Lieutenant Donald Hillier. And there was 10 crew members aboard this aircraft. On December 28th, 1944, they were part of a squadron that were flying from Italy to Germany, and their goal was to bomb some oil fields in Germany. So they took off from Italy, no big deal. There was 10 men on board Josephine, again piloted by Captain Lieutenant Hilliard. The co-pilot was Louis Herman Keel, and then they had a navigator, um, other men on board. They had tail gunners, right and left waist gunners, and so forth. So the plane, they're flying. There was 80 B-17s in the squadron that day, and they had left Italy. They're now over Germany, and what happened was the number 3 engine, something went wrong with the number 3 engine mechanically. So the B-17 bombers have 4 engines, 4 large propeller-driven engines. And engine number 3 went out, and what Lieutenant Captain Hilliard did was he shut the engine down, he fed the propellers. And what that means is, propellers are on a little bit of an angle because they cut through the wind and they produce, propel themselves through the wind. That's why the propellers. So when you feather the propeller, it goes from like an angle like this to like this, so the wind can pass right through it, so you don't have any wind resistance. So when you feather a propeller, you've shut down the engine. So now he's flying on 3 of 4 engines. The problem is, back then, aircraft needed all of their engines to fly. They weren't very efficient. The engines were not efficient. In today's modern aircraft, you see the aircrafts that you fly, you see 2 engines, right? And the aircraft can actually fly for hours on 1 engine. So if 1 engine goes out, you're fine. You can still fly. Whereas back in 1945, if an engine goes out, you had some problems. You weren't going to be flying regularly like you would with 4 engines. So what happened was number 3 engine went out. They shut it down, feathered the props, but the problem was he couldn't keep up with the 80 aircraft formation. So not only did the plane start falling back from the formation because you couldn't fly as fast with 3 engines, he started to lose some altitude. And there's some statement here about one of the tail gunners in one of the B-17s that was in front of Josephine witnessing what was happening. And he saw Josephine fall out of formation. He saw Josephine jettison 6 bombs, probably to lose weight. And you don't want to, if your plane's going down, you don't want to go down with bombs on board. And then a little bit later, he saw Josephine jettison 6 additional bombs. So it had 12 bombs on board, jettison all of its bombs. But at some point, Josephine lagged behind the other group so much that they couldn't see Josephine anymore. But Captain Hilliard at some point at 12:40 p.m. Called the squadron leader and said, we're bailing out because they're losing altitude. They're flying on 3 engines. Things are not good. So all 10 of them bail out. Fortunately, all 10 of them get to the ground. But unfortunately, Lieutenant Hilliard survived. 9 others survived. But Sergeant Eagleston was the right waist gunner, and something happened. He got on the ground, parachuted fine. German soldiers were there essentially waiting for them because they see the plane go down. Not sure exactly what happened, but one of the German soldiers ended up shooting Eglstein, and killing him. And later, this German soldier was tried and found guilty of this crime and was jailed for it because when the gunner came down, he put up his hands and gave up and was shot. So anyways, long story short, Lieutenant Hilliard was a prisoner of war in Germany, managed to survive the war, and was released. So, I have this postcard here, and I thought, well, can I find a relative of Lieutenant Hilliard? Because they might want this postcard back. So I did some investigation, tried to trace some family trees. Internet's a wonderful thing. I found a person down in Florida, emailed them. I said, hey, are you a relative of Lieutenant Hilliard? I have a postcard here dated January 31st, 1945 to my grandmother, but I thought, it'd be more of sentimental value to you than it is to me. And fortunately enough, this person got back to me, said, yeah, I'm the grandson of Captain Hilliard, and I would love to have the postcard. So got in contact with the guy. He wants the postcard, gave me his mailing address, so I'll be sending this postcard down to him, and hopefully his family enjoys it as much as I enjoyed finding it in my grandparents' stuff. Now, if I was a huge YouTube channel and had 1 million viewers and all this stuff, I'd probably fly this down to Florida and meet with the guy and give it to him and make a video and all that stuff. But I'm not. I'm not a big time YouTuber. So I'll be mailing this out this week. I'll take some photos of it first, just so I have that for my record. So hopefully they will enjoy that, and a little more on what, a little more about their grandfather. So that's my video for today. Hopefully you enjoyed that story. I thought it was pretty interesting that I found this after sitting in my grandparents' basement for 80 years. Uh, Found this postcard, found the family, contacted the family, found a little bit about Lieutenant Hillier and his history and what happened to the plane. So thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video, a little bit different. And as always, keep exploring.